Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Upside Swings NBA Draft Show, the draft show with the highest ceiling. I'm your host, Bryce Hendricks, joined as always by Cooper Klein and Stone Hansen, and also by a couple of great guests, Charlie Parker and Sam Wilson, two friends of the pod that we're also, fans of as well. So it's the best time of year, man. It's draft season. Stone has finished up all his draft work. All he's got is being on random podcasts here and there, and slumming it with us over here doing a mock draft. But then, Coop and I think, have a little bit of film work left. But for the most part, this is the culmination of draft season, baby. This is everything we've been waiting for, everything we've been hoping for. So before we get too into the draft and kind of how things are going to go, I'll start with Sam and Charlie. Tell us how you doing, and if you want to let people know too, let them know your Twitter ads and where they can find your work.
Yeah, I'll hop in. It's a pleasure to be here. Longtime fan of all three of you guys on the pod. And, this is probably one of my first live recording type things. So I'm pretty amped, and excuse me if I, fumble over myself a little bit, but you can find me on Twitter at @PG, _PG. And, I wrapped up most of my draft work, a couple weeks ago. I'm a little bit sad that I blasted my board before I saw that Behringer is just like a monster. Going to be too low on him. But, it's been a really fun cycle and a fun process, and happy to join you guys to, do this fun exercise.
Yeah, and fellas, I'm just excited to be here. I think this is my third mock draft episode with you guys, and first two have been an absolute ball. This is it's a fun draft class, and I can't wait to dive into this. We got a great week coming next week. We got Game 7 on Sunday, and then the draft on Wednesday. I mean, blessed to be alive for next week. And yeah, man, I'm excited to dive into it.
Absolutely, it's a wonderful time to be a hoops fan right now. This will drop, I think. Coop, correct me if I'm wrong, right after Game 7. So all of you listening will know who won the NBA championship. But we currently do not. We just watched Indiana have one of the most impressive Game 6 victories I've seen. And I have a feeling that this will be a classic Game 7 a la 2016, 2010, and even going back a little bit farther, 2005, which was, I was pretty young for that. But Coop, Stone, my friends, culmination of all this work we've been doing, which this has been maybe the most gratifying cycle so far here at Upside Swings with the move to YouTube and all the stuff we've been doing. How are you guys doing? And then, how excited are you to actually get to take a little bit of a break from watching all this damn film?
Stoked to be done. Stoked that we're here. And I think, I've been looking forward to this. This is probably the most fun we get to have throughout the cycle, rather than just, talking about guys. We actually get to do an exercise, which we don't usually get to do throughout the cycle. So this will be fun. I've enjoyed Sam and Charlie's work over the years. That's pretty much why they're both on here. And so, yeah, I think it'll be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to making a lot of trades, hopefully.
Yeah, nobody make trades with Stone. He's already made far too many for the exercise. I'm great. My apartment's almost fully empty. I'm in my closet and I sound echoey as shit. But I'm excited. This is gonna be a good week. It's gonna be a good exercise. So Bryce, just take us right into it. Let's get moving.
Absolutely. So before we get started, there are some obvious ground rules we'll get out. There are trades. So we all had teams. I'm not going to go over who has each team right now. You guys will figure that out. I think if we just dump the names of all the teams we have, it would all kind of go in one ear and out the other. So you'll kind of figure it out. But we all had teams that we were in control of instead of just getting picks and trying to determine what that team would do. We had more an ability to have more of a holistic strategy. So there are trades. All the trades are cap legal, and we're only doing trades that involve draft picks. We're trying to keep this as realistic and focused on the draft as possible. But the truth is, a big part of drafting is trading. The draft day is there's more trades on draft day than there is at the NBA trade deadline. So that's a big part of it. We'll have a minute and a half to make our picks. And we're going to give you guys kind of explanations of why we took certain players with certain picks for certain teams. It's a great great thing, and we're very excited. And on the clock with the first pick, it's me with the Dallas Mavericks. And I will hold you all in no suspense. I will be drafting the one, the only Cooper Flagg. This has been known, but there is, there is something to be said here for just how good of a prospect Flagg is. We talked about this a lot with on the Big Board podcast as well, but this is a special player with real upside on both ends. Basically, no one this age has ever been this productive. Reclassing up, being a part of a pretty all-time team. They won't always get talked about in that way because they didn't finish it out and win a championship. But I do think that there is a Stone is so aggressive trying to trade right now. There is a lot to be said for just how good of a player Flagg is and how obvious a pick this is. He is up there with the likes of Anthony Davis, Zion Williamson, to me, if not quite to the level of maybe a Wembanyama or like LeBron type guy. All-time pick here. We will not hold you in much suspense in the eyes of many. The draft doesn't start here, but I think in the eyes of most of us here, the draft kind of does start here. Stone at 2 with the San Antonio Spurs. Who you got?
Well, it's pertinent to announce the trade. I think I did because it's going to relate to the pick I take here. I traded Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, top 4 protected 2026 pick, and the 14th pick over to the Celtics to get Jaylen Brown for this team. And because we don't have a particular great level of shooting on this roster, I'm going to go with Con Knipple, and we are going to start things off with a bang here. The first surprise pick. I think he works well with this new Spurs team. I think he's going to slide in between Jaylen Brown and De'Aaron Fox quite well. I just love seeing everyone's reactions, and I'm excited about the pick. San Antonio's, I think, in a better spot than they were last year.
I gave you the Spurs so you could take Dylan Harper, and this is what you fucking do to me, bro.
All right, so quickly, Charlie is on the clock here, but with the Philadelphia 76ers, and I know the pick is in, but I do quickly, Sam, I want to get your perspective on this, partially because I'm not even fully sure. How surprised are you to see that it's not Dylan Harper, and what do you make of the slight Dylan Harper fall here?
I'm not surprised that it's not Harper. I'm a little surprised that it's Con. I think that Con has massive fans on all sides of draft Twitter, like eye test, spreadsheet guys, and like a really amazing profile. But just seeing him go at 2 is just a little bit jarring to me. He was, generally like a support player for Duke and shared some creation load with Flagg, but for a guy to make that kind of leap to be the second pick after that kind of season, which was a great season, I just think it's a little bit astounding. But I like the skill set next to all those guys you got in San Antonio now with Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting team, right? Definitely a team that will be looking to compete next year. So I'm very interested to see how that goes. For what it's worth, I have Con it too. I can't even get mad at this pick, but I do feel like we've got done a little bit dirty here.
I think I'm the lowest on draft Twitter on Con too.
Which
so
is
maybe that's why my reaction was like that. But
exactly why I wanted to get your opinion on it, because I understand that there are concerns with Con, and so I do find that really interesting. I also wonder that obviously this will not happen, though. I do think Con is going to go higher than people suspect. I do wonder when the last time, if ever, 2 players from the same team have went 1-2. That's kind of crazy. Charlie, the suspense is over. Who you got here?
So with the Sixers, I'm going with who I think is the favorite to go number 3 at this point in the class, and my number 2 on my board, which is VJ Edgecombe. Philly starts to build a super interesting backcourt with McCain and Maxey and VJ, and I really just think he has such I wouldn't say a high floor, but between his feel offensively, obviously his incredible athleticism and the shooting touch that he showcased, from high school through FIBA last summer. And even this year at Baylor, even though he had a down stretch, to start the season, I think there's just a ton of upside with him. And if I'm being honest, I think Philly really needs to start looking more to the future rather than trying to find the perfect piece to go on a championship contender built around Paul George and Joel Embiid. Considering one, Paul George had a really, really rough season last year, and Embiid just cannot seem to stay on the floor. So with that, I'm going with my BPA, VJ, and starting to form just a great backcourt over there in Philly.
Yeah, no, really, really fascinating. But it sounds like the Dylan Harper slide is real. But I do know that Sam, the pick is in. But quickly, Coop, I want to get your opinion on VJ at 3. And again, the Dylan Harper slide.
On my board, the Dylan Harper slide isn't real. This is exactly where he should be going on my board. But VJ here at 3, I've seen a lot of talk that this is like the ultimate Daryl Morey pick. A guy who has the analytics stuff, he has the athleticism stuff, he has the RSCI ranking stuff. Just every single thing that Daryl Morey is in love with. And as someone who used to be on a team used to be a fan of a team that was GM'd by him, he loves guys who are 6'4". And I think you got the best 6'4" player in the draft. This is a little rich for my blood here at 3. I know you're a little higher on VJ. I do struggle with some of the handling and playmaking and defensive stuff a little more than some. And I think there's a lot of question marks for me personally to take him in this high. But when you have a guy like Maxey, you have a guy like McCain, you can slot him in at the 3. And I like the fit there. So Sam, you ready to take your pick here at 4?
Yeah, I'm going to end the slide. Coop alluded to it not really being a slide. Like, I think we all got kind of crushed for having Harper, 5th, 6th on our boards or whatever. But, I'm going to stand here and take him. I think it's actually like a pretty good situation. Oh, so with the 4th pick, I select Dylan Harper. I think it works next to LaMelo, honestly. Like, I think a lot of the questions about Harper are like whether he's a true, primary initiator, like his self-creation, like with his lack of perceived athleticism, and, of course, the shooting translation. I think a lot of those issues are a little bit remedied playing next to LaMelo, who can, stand 27 feet from the rim and, be a threat to shoot. And, they've got theoretically some slashers, some guys who can, get to the rim, help create some space. And, Harper can sort of step into a secondary initiator role. And, you've got your backcourt of the future. So I am going to stop the slide and, I think it's actually quite a good fit.
Yeah, I think this is exactly where I would take Harper. The more I think about it, I have Harper in a tier with some other guys, and I have him at 4 on my board right now, 4 or 5. I'm still kind of wavering back and forth, but I think in this exact situation, this is the pick I would have made. I love the idea of him not having to be a point guard and getting to play with someone who can take a lot more of the transition point guard reps from him, while also providing him space for him to run some ball screen and DHO stuff in the half court. I really, really like that fit. I think that's really intriguing. And I think it's going to be better for Harper. Part of the worry with me, specifically with Harper and like San Antonio, is that's not a particularly well-spaced team, and they have their guy who they want to have the ball in the half court all the time. While LaMelo is a great player, he is still at this point not a great half court player. And Dylan Harper could provide that, given that there's a lot of spacing here. They have a good role man. I think this is a really, really good developmental context for him. Really, really solid pick here. Stone is up with the Jazz, and it sounds like the pick is in. But I do quickly, I'm going to throw it to Stone in a second. But Charlie, I did want to get your perspective. You passed on Dylan at 3, and he goes here at 4. How do you kind of feel about Dylan and where you're at with him, and specifically his fit here with Charlotte at 4?
So to be honest, my take with Dylan is fairly straightforward. I think he's truly an incredible rim pressure guard, and the handle's incredible. His ability to get downhill is great. And his success in the NBA at the end of the day is going to come down to the shooting development. If he's really able to develop, pull up equity, and he's able to have players guard him out on the perimeter, as well as developing kind of the in-between game with his floater and his mid-range, I think he has a very, very clear path to being the second most valuable player in this draft. My problem with that is the shooting profile is, not the easiest to bet on outside of the volume that he got up as a freshman. So I'm just a little bit lower on him. He's still, in my second tier, top 4 guy for me. But at the end of the day, I think it's really going to come down to the shooting development. And I think I'm just a little bit lower on his shooting outlook than a lot of people.
Absolutely fair. Stone, here at 5, go ahead.
Yeah, I am going to select Kasparas Jakučionis for the Utah Jazz. I think that I buy him, I think, more than a lot of people, probably at least the 3 upside swings guys for sure are pretty in on him. I think that the equity for being a lead guard or, off the ball are both there. And I think at this point in time, like, Utah's sort of open to either outcome. And I think, as much as I like Collier, that's not stopping me from taking Jakučionis, and I still think both can work out together. I think they really need just like better decision making and just more shooting out there. And I think Kasparas really provides that at the highest level of anybody else left on the board at this point in time. So I'm pretty happy with the pick.
Yeah, so now the Wizards are up here at 6, and I know the pick is in, and I know Coop didn't have to think for a second. But, we had a long discussion on Jakučionis with on the Big Board pod, and, I gave myself for him. Stone and Coop also like him quite a bit. Charlie, Sam, I would love to hear where you guys are on Jakučionis, and if you feel like, this is much higher than he's going in consensus right now, if you feel like this is, maybe a big reach.
I can start. So I actually come just a little bit lower off on Jakučionis. I really appreciate the feel, and I think he's going to be a good shooter at the next level. But the handle is really, really worrisome for me. I don't know if he's going to, especially to pair with his athleticism, which I think is also a fairly big worry. I kind of struggle to see, outcomes where he's able to be a primary ball handler for, a top offense. But it's easy to see him in a connector, third, second guard role where he's making good decisions, playing off other players. And yeah, just being a good third guard, on a roster, although 5 would be a little bit rich for me if I was drafted.
Yeah, I think he's really intriguing. If you want to talk about context, like, that offense at Illinois was absolutely disgusting. And, maybe that lends to him making some terrible, terrible decisions with the ball. Maybe he had the green light to do that. Maybe it was like the best thing for the team to do. So, like, you don't want to chalk it up to him just being like a low IQ, low field player. I think that, he makes some incredible reads and, like, is going to be at least a quality connector passer. And, I do also have doubts on the athleticism, but, I think there's also a world where he has like some sort of outlier shooting dev where, like, he took incredibly difficult shots like this year, and he didn't hit them at a great clip, but like I would be willing to bet on him being a high level shooter, more so than anything else. So, 5's rich. I had him at 11 myself. But I don't hate it. You're taking a bet. So.
Absolutely. Coop, go ahead.
With the 6th pick in the NBA draft, the Washington Wizards select Derek Queen, the number 2 guy on my board, and I think has an argument for the best advantage creator in the draft. Just creates clean advantages consistently, gets downhill, uses his strength. There's still some room for development with the playmaking, but he's obviously got the feel, got great touch. And Washington needs a bet at creation. I like Sarr. Sarr's fine. I think I had him 1 on my board last year, but you need somebody who can actually dribble and pass. And I just want to see Queen and Sarr together, running pick and rolls as the 4-5 men together, setting each other up, screening for each other, getting downhill. Washington really unlocked something cool with some of the Sarr pick and roll running to end the season last year. And you have all these cool wings next to him, like Bilal, Keyshawn, whatever you think of, Bub Carrington and Jordan Poole. But plenty of guys here, and you need a bet at real creation, and that's Queen to me. So Washington comes out of this draft very happy. I'm excited. This is what I want to happen in real life too. So we win.
Coop gets his guy here at 6. We had a good discussion on Queen again in the Big Board pod. But this has been Coop's guy, and I enjoy this pick. I really enjoy this fit. You told me he gets to play the 4 and make up for some of Sarr's rebounding issues while having a potential quote unquote 3 and D5 behind him. Where this is a team that doesn't want to win a ton anyways. Let Derek Queen be the tank commander. Bring me, DeBonster, Darren Peterson next year, and all of a sudden you got a squad. So all in on this team. Sam is up next here with the Pelicans. But Charlie, I did want to get your take quickly on Queen and how you feel about him here with the Washington Wizards.
I feel like you're throwing all the players who I'm not the biggest fan of at me. But Derek Queen is another guy who is just, offensively, he's extremely impressive, moves like a guard, has great feel. But I really do worry about the lack of size and the athleticism defensively and the lack of shooting ability. I feel like Queen can even fit into this archetype where even if it hits, it's still somewhat limiting on a team building level. For building a championship roster, just because you're either going to need to have a shooting 5 next to him and a rim protector, or you're going to have Queen at the 5 and your defense is probably going to bleed a little bit. But the upside offensively, and I love the fit in Washington especially because you have Alex Sarr who theoretically can do those things next to him, and I think he would be extremely fun to watch in Washington if he went at 6 and could really hit those higher end outcomes where he is a offensive star creator. Even though I'm a little bit lower on those outcomes, maybe in some other context.
Which is, it's fair. I do think, we've talked about this, but I do think that Queen is a bit of a swing for the fences. But I think if you're a team in Washington's position, you should be taking home run swings. So, Sam, you're up here with New Orleans. Who you got?
With the 7th pick, the New Orleans Pelicans are going to select Kaman Maluach. I think, people might be like, oh, didn't they just get Missy? Isn't he like kind of promising? Don't care. Honestly, just don't care. Like, he's not an all-star level guy. Like, he's a solid bench big, in my opinion. Yeah, Maluach is the pick. I think that next to Zion, if Zion's going to still be there long-term and playing in the NBA, I guess, I think it works. I like Maluach's shooting projection a lot. Like, you see, you don't want to fall in love with the videos, but like he hits some tough ones in the videos and, the stroke looks good. Free throw percentage is good. I believe in him being like, even a little bit of a spacer and, you have questions about general feel. I've seen that on Twitter some, I think he got a lot better defensively, especially as the season went on at Duke. And, just getting that guy more reps and more time playing basketball, even, I think he's going to be, a really, really good basketball player. I had him 4 on my board. I think this is a little bit of a steal. And, if Zion's going to be occupying the paint, I actually believe in him to stretch the floor a little bit at times.
I think this is a really interesting pick. And Maluach is maybe the player I've struggled with the most in this draft to try and get a sense for his upside, because I think he's a great offensive big already as someone who's this young because he just finishes everything. Like if you're 7'2" with his catch radius and you just make all your layups, like that's a pretty high floor, I feel like. And so I like this pick. I think I sometimes think shooting bigs next to Zion are overrated. If Zion is just going to go through the chest of his man anyways. What you really want is someone who can clean up his messes and you can dump it down to occasionally. You want shooting at the other spots, don't get me wrong, but and also again, you mentioned it. I love that you're not thinking about Yves Missy here. Don't care. Take your best player all the time. Love that. And so even though this is a little it's slightly rich for me value wise on Malawach, I actually really like the fit here. I'm up with Brooklyn at 8, but quickly, Stone, I wanted to get your take on Malawach at 7 to the Pelicans.
Yeah, I think. I'm moderately in on Malawach. Like I think I still have him lotto, so it's not like a crazy reach or anything. I think I'm less optimistic about the shooting. Like if I'm drafting him, I'm personally like not betting on the shooting coming around, but I don't know if it matters because the touch is so good around the rim. Like he's such a good finisher that I don't even know if he has to be like any sort of floor spacer to really provide a lot of value for a team offensively. Defensively, I think is my bigger concern, especially next to Zion, who's not the not the best defender. So I think there's room for Malawach to be like a really insane defender. If he's, out on the perimeter in pinch situations, he can switch. And by the rim, if he can improve the awareness and the developmental track and go on the right pathway, like I think he can be an impactful defender. It's just more projection that I am not as comfortable with taking this high. But if you really buy either of those things, like I totally understand taking him here. So I don't think it's a crazy pick by any means.
All right. So I'm up here at 8 with the Brooklyn Nets, and I'm going to this is probably like the first like crazy surprise pick of this draft. I'm going to take Walter Clayton Jr. here. He did receive a green room invite, so for whatever that's worth. I think that the Nets are at a place where they should be hunting stars, and this is the best star bet left on my board. I think he's a potentially really, really special off-the-dribble shooter. I think the rim pressure stuff maybe gets a little bit muted because of he played with Condon and Chinyelu and Henlogden 95% of his minutes. He just a really special shooter with I think really good kind of creativity and reactivity in his handle. He's a pretty good athlete for this kind of player, right? Like even though he only dunked 6 times, like he's just a more powerful leaper than a lot of guys, in this realm. I think he can be better defensively than he got to show sometimes at Florida because Florida's scheme was so specific about, hey, just make guys go to the rim, funnel them all the time, take a ton of chances because you have that help behind you. So you kind of got away with some bullshit, but this is where I'm at with Brooklyn. There's one other guy that was really, really close here that I don't want to spoil because I might want him at 10. But I do think that this is the bet for me. I want star bets, and Clayton is the best star bet left. So that's where I'm going to go. I want to get Sam and Charlie's take on this. Though I know, Charlie already has the pick in at 9. But Sam, I want to get your take first while the Toronto Raptors are on the clock. Is this crazy high for Walter Clayton?
I mean, I think compared to consensus, yes, but like I don't hate it at all. I have Clayton 15th on my board, and I think that of course the national championship riser thing is something that always happens. Like I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that this could happen if someone just falls in love with him, and I think he's a great player. The concerns with age and relative athleticism / defense, again, you look at a guy like similar size like Nemhard doing stuff like he's doing on the TV every night right now. You look at a guy like FVV, like smaller even, like able to compete defensively. I don't think it's a stretch to say that, Clayton, who, former football player, nice stocky build, like will be able to compete defensively. And, as an off the dribble shooter, he might be the best in the class. So I buy it. Why not?
Yeah, and then I'm actually directly in lockstep with Sam. I have Walter also at 15 on my board, and it's really a bet on a unbelievable shooter who does everything else kind of good enough, good enough to take advantage of that incredible pull up ability and gravity that he draws from that. So I agree. I think it's a really fun start bet. I'd love to see him have a 25% usage as a rookie in Brooklyn and see what happens. See if he can get 15 threes up a game. So yeah, I think that's an extremely fun pick. And then I'll go ahead and pick for Nia Toronto. I'm going to go with Colin Murray Boyles. Murray Boyles for pretty much the entire cycle has been one of my favorite players in this class. And I know it's a little bit of a iffy fit in Toronto. They have this new core with BI, RJ Barrett, Scotty Barnes, Grady Dick, a bunch of kind of ball handling wings who aren't, good enough ball handlers and also struggle to space the floor. But I also don't think their direction is strong enough to not be picking BPA in this position. I think the defensive front court that you can build with Scotty Barnes and Colin Murray Boyles makes a bunch of incredibly fun possibilities. They're both great passers. I think they could actually play off each other really, really well. And again, Colin Murray Boyles is also a little bit of a guy. If he shoots, I think he's almost a lock to return top 5 value in this class because of how good he is defensively, how good he is as a decision maker. Even though I know the assist or the turnover numbers were a little high this season at South Carolina, but a lot of that is context dependent. And his ability to still thrive in a context as terrible as South Carolina's was this year, I thought was extremely impressive. And he's the easy pick for me here at 9 for Toronto.
Yeah, Stone, I want to get your perspective on this. First, I will say that the Brooklyn Nets are back on the clock here. They made a trade to get Dillon Brooks and the 59th pick for Cam Johnson and the 10th pick as well, this pick, for Cam Johnson and the 19th pick. So we moved up to get off of, or not to get off of, we moved up to take Dillon Brooks's kind of mediocre contract, though. I think we could probably flip him for positive value in time. And we're trading Cam Johnson to the Rockets. So I'm happy with that trade. Coop can give his perspective on that in a little bit. But Stone, how do you feel here about CMB at 9 to the Raptors?
Yeah, I mean, this is the best value pick according to my board. Like I'd be pretty happy value wise, and just because he's that high, like I couldn't pass on him. I don't personally love the team fit just with who else they have there. But if there's more trades on the way, I'd be pretty in on that. But yeah, I think Murray Boyles, like defensively, like just helps continue to complete that identity that they have with him and Barnes. If Pirtle is there long term, like I think that defensive identity of just like crazy long and fairly like high field defenders that can defend multiple positions, in my opinion. Like I think those guys just provide a lot of value, and they're all like really strong. So I for the bets in terms of like BPA, this is for me pretty easy. But long term, I would probably look to move some things around, but obviously that's in real life not going to happen with the most recent acquisitions they've been making.
Yeah, so the Nets here, I'm really torn because there's a couple of guys that I really like here, but I think I'm gonna pull the trigger on another upside guy again with the idea that if I'm the Nets, I want to be bad next year anyways. And so I kind of want to just take some bets on guys I can throw some usage at. I really don't have any young players on this team I'm invested in. Even Cam Thomas to me is not super interesting. So I'm going to take Noah Asonge. His value is really weird to get a hold on in terms of consensus and everything, but I just really like Asonge's upside. He is just a very productive, efficient young player in a pro league, and I think he has a path to value as like a high level transition player early who can be really funky defensively. I think he has a lot of upside on the defensive end too, with just his kind of natural fluidity and good feel. I'm really worried about his offense in the half court. I can't lie. Like there needs to be some either significant jumper improvement, some type of athleticism games, or some handle improvement. Like he's very theoretical in the half court right now, but he's just efficient. Like he just finds a way to score around the rim consistently, while also, I think being a positive defensively. I don't like, again, we're already past the point. Like I'm not really in love with anyone other than there's one guy left that I really, really love who Coop is going to probably take some point down the line, who I didn't think fit very well with Brooklyn. But this is a bet for me that I'm willing to take, with the acknowledgement that, hey, this might not work out, but at 10, I'm happy to take this swing here, especially when I kind of got my guy that I really wanted at 8. Sam, I want to get your take on Noah Asonge while the Portland Trailblazers here are on the clock at 11.
Yeah, I think he's really, really interesting, and the upside's pretty tantalizing. You sort of alluded to it right now. He's theoretical on offense, but he has a really good tendency to be able to like draw fouls on the way to the lane. It's not like he's like super explosive, but it looks like he's got some really good like body control and awareness, and he has some weird funky finishes and N1s. I think I trust him to like figure it out. And also he's got a great frame to add some more weight. And at his age, I think that that's totally reasonable. So he's going to be Giannis. That's what I'm saying. No, but I'm a fan of the pick. I think he's a good player. He's relatively high on my board at 5 or 6, depending on which side of the bed I wake up on. But he's definitely worth the swing here for a garbage team. No offense, Nets fans.
No, absolutely. All right, Charlie, you're up here with the Trailblazers. Who you got?
Real quick before I pick, I'll just say I love the Noah pick in Brooklyn. I think he is the exact kind of bet that they should be swinging on over this next phase of the Brooklyn roster. But going in with the Portland Trailblazers, I'm taking another one of my guys for this cycle, and I'm going with Carter Bryant. Portland is a little bit of a tough team to pick for because they have good young bets at every position. In the backcourt, we got Scoot and Shaden, and then you got Tumani and Denny, who I guess aren't the youngest players at this point, but great forward defenders. Then you have Klingon over there at the 5. So I'm just giving them another wing bet. I really, really love Carter defensively. I think he was one of the most impressive forward defenders at 19 that I've seen in a couple of years. And I think he's going to shoot the basketball. I think it's going to be pretty limited outside of that, but I think his baseline of bringing valuable skills early in his career leave more opportunity for him developing some of those other skills that he's lacking at this point, because he'll be able to get on the floor and bring value as he continues to develop.
Yeah, no, this is I like this pick. I don't know that this is the pick I would have made here, but I think for a team like Portland, where you're really like, this is already a team that has a path to an identity here. Like it's easy to see this team eventually being just one of the best defensive teams in the league, right? Klingon, defense first player, probably going to be a pretty elite defensive big man, top 5 ceiling on that end of the floor. Tamani Kamara was an all defense guy this year. How much is he in the plans for them? It's hard to say, but he is already an elite defender, with even a chance to get better. Carter Bryant really adds to that. I really like that. I think it's interesting, Charlie. I do want to ask you, how much do you believe in Scoot right now? Is he someone you're still betting on to be, the type of guy that could kind of be a franchise cornerstone, or are you a little bit worried about that kind of primary bet with Scoot?
Yeah, I mean, tales all this time. Young guards take a couple of years to develop. So I wouldn't say I'm all the way out, but I also wouldn't say I buy Scoot as a long-term, top 15 primary initiator in the NBA, who can shoulder 30% usage. But I think he can play a role and maybe buoy an offense to being league average, especially if you're a team like Portland who has an opportunity to be one of the best defenses in the league long term. When you have Klingon at the 5 and you have Tumani and Denny and now Carter Bryant, I think he can handle primary ball handler responsibilities. I'm certainly a little lower than I was, obviously, than I came in pre-draft, but I still believe in Scoot as a starting point guard long term, probably fitting in around 15th point guard in the NBA to 25th. But I think he's a starting level player and someone I would still be invested in if I was Portland.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair take. All right, Stone here at 12 with Chicago. I know the pick is in, but I do want to quickly note that Chicago has made a trade. They traded for Isaiah Joe, pick 14, pick 24, and 2027 first round pick. And they gave up Kobe White and pick 45 and then a future second. So they made a trade with the Thunder. Thunder got Kobe White. I'll discuss that later from that perspective. But Stone, do you want to talk through the value you got there and then make your pick?
Yeah, I made that trade because I think Chicago's in a place where it's just better to start over regardless of who they have. Maybe outside of Modest, and I don't really feel like Kobe White really matches the timeline of a rebuild at this point anymore. And I think that paying him I think Kobe White's a good player. I don't want to pay him as my number one option. I don't want him to be my number one option. So I think moving him and getting 3 first-round picks in return was good value for the Bulls and where they're at. I'm somewhat upset with Charlie for taking Carter Bryant here. Sort of foiled my plans with the dual picks here at 12 and 14. So maybe he won't be back on next year. But I'm gonna go. I'm just kidding. I'm gonna go. I think with Thomas Sorber for the Chicago Bulls. I'm in on Sorber. I think that there's a lot of defensive potential there with him that the Bulls just don't have, obviously. And I think that having someone that the potential to maybe be an anchor for your defense, well-being, I think just a post-up guy who can get his own offensively and also not create for others, but be a cog in the machine without keeping the ball stagnant, I think is really important. So I'm going to go with Sorber here as sort of the new franchise center moving forward and in the hopes that he can fill that sort of role.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Sam, I'd love to hear your take on Sorber because I don't think this is a in lockstep with consensus pick by any means. Stone has talked, fairly consistently about being higher on Sorber. And I think there's a lot of, draft Twitter folk that are higher on Sorber. So what's your take here? How do you feel about it?
I had Sorber 16. So this is sort of the range where that would totally be acceptable. And, as Stone touched on, the fit's really good. And, anyone's going to look good replacing Vucevic at center on defense. And I think that he really has that upside. Like his measurements were pretty sick. I think that surprised a lot of people. And, he could be a defensive cornerstone, but I'm also sort of buying the shot a little bit, I think that's been under discussed, out of the, I group him sort of with Queen and Newell as those freshman centers. I buy his shooting projection actually just as much as those guys. So, I think it's a good pick. Defensive upside high, offensive game is there. Georgetown, obviously not ideal situation. And the injury is a little bit scary, but I like the pick.
My pushback and question with Sorber has long been, what's the actual upside here? I'm just not fully sold that he's, great on either end. I think that there's potential. I think the sell is more defense than offense. But I kind of think he's a bit of a dirty work big. But it doesn't surprise me at all that that Stone likes him, and especially that Stone likes him for Chicago, because I do feel like he's very Wendell Carter Jr.-esque in overall skill set. I think he's less promising as a shooter, but only marginally less promising as a shooter. Just a dirty work big man who's really smart, finds his way to be in the right spots all the time, all that type of stuff. Coop is on the clock here with Atlanta. Coop, the floor is yours.
With the 13th pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the Atlanta Hawks select Rasheer Fleming out of St. Joe's. The Hawks desperately need guys who can play basketball. And as much as it does feel kind of like Rasheer and Risa Shea have a lot of overlap, as far as conceptually just kind of slightly limited shooty guys, I think Fleming's better than Risa Shea. You can play Fleming here at the 4 or go some more small ball 5 stuff, a lot more athletic. I think he has more upside as a driver. He's slightly older, way better finisher than a guy like Risa Shea. And, with a guy like Trey, as much as, you don't want to just fall into the trap of surrounding him with shooters, you want to surround him with actually good shooters who can also do other stuff like cut. And, I buy the closeout attacking more than a lot of people. I like the screening. I love the effort. Just like the perfect role player to really optimize your other guys, space the floor a little bit more for guys like Dyson. You can play with Jalen Johnson. I think you could play mega ball lineups composed of, guys like Fleming, Risa Shea, Jalen Johnson, Onyeka Okongwu. You just have so many interesting front court pieces that are like actually interesting in a way someone like DeAndre Hunter isn't. So I really like this pick. I have Fleming really high on my board. If you listen to the Big Board Pod, you'll see how high. But yeah, I love Rasheer Fleming. I'm happy to get him here, 13.
Yeah, this was always going to be the pick here. Boston is now on the clock here at 14, and I'll talk about that trade here in a second. But Charlie, I'm throwing it to you again, and Sam, I'd like to get your quick take as well before I round out the lottery. Rasheer Fleming at 13. This is, again, one of those that is probably way off from consensus. No green room invite for Rasheer, I don't think. Is this, how do you guys feel? Is this someone that you're interested in, that you value? Is this like a gigantic reach on your guys' board? Where are you at?
Yeah, Fleming's a really fun bet in this class. He's kind of right on the line of being a top 20 guy for me. I have a couple questions with the shooting priors, prior to this season. I think he's obviously really going to need to shoot in the NBA because other than dunking, that's really his only offensive skill that brings any value. But the defense is really interesting. The rim protection. I could almost see him thriving in almost a Jalen Smith-esque role, maybe a little bit more rim protection, maybe more of a 4 than a backup 5. But the feel and the decision making is definitely lacking at this point. But the often sought after archetype of 3 and rim protection, Fleming does both of those, especially if he shoots the lights off at the next level. So I think he's a fun bet for Atlanta at 13.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Fleming fan in the room. I know there's the aspects of his game, like if the shooting's real, like at his size and measurements, it's really tantalizing. Like Charlie touched on it, the priors are like pretty bad. It's not even like they're mid. Like he shot I think below 70% from free throw both of his previous seasons, and just he's a play finisher, right? When he got the ball in college, he was expected to finish the play. Guys adjusting to that in the NBA is a little bit wonky sometimes. I'm not saying he can't do it. We saw Aaron Gordon go from a pure play finisher to the best role player in the NBA, arguably mid-career. So it's definitely possible. But for a guy who's really truly a 3-and-D bet with questionable 3, in my opinion, maybe stand still, he'll be good. I don't see any movement or diversity in his 3-point shooting, but I get it.
Yeah, so I want to talk quickly about the Celtics strategy before I round out the lottery here. So we traded for Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, this pick, and then a 2026 top 5 protected pick to get off of Jaylen Brown. And get off is not the right word, but listen, the Celtics, I think, should try to be bad next year. Jason Tatum's going to miss the season. What I would really like to do, if it's me personally, I would like to see what a team where Peyton Pritchard is, a top 3 usage guy looks like. I kind of want to give him the ball all the time and just kind of see. So, looking to get off of Drew Holiday, that's probably going to take a pick to get off of. And then I'm, looking to hopefully get, off of Derek White as well, because I think he has a lot of value. Porzingis, probably not, because he's probably at a nadir in his value right now. Don't want to trade him for, nothing, when I think there's a path to him being valuable again, assuming he can ever get over the mysterious illness. But Jaylen Brown, as tough as it is to get rid of him, I think is sort of out of place on a team that's crazy expensive and is not going to have the type of player that can make you a championship level team. And I think the best idea is retool around what will eventually be a new Jason Tatum. And you have, Peyton Pritchard is one of the best contracts in the NBA, in my opinion. And you have a couple opportunities for, really high level, picks. And hopefully I would really like to maximize my number of picks in 2026 to try and get into that top 3. If I could have one of DeBonsta, Peterson, Boozer, especially Boozer. Boozer's the guy I'm highest on in that class, probably. To put next to Jason Tatum to kind of be the next great Boston Celtics team, that would be my ideal. Obviously, that takes the right amount of luck and planning and all that, but that's what I would do. A Pritchard, Tatum, one of those 3, plus the types of guys I can put around him. I think Devin Vassell is a great fit with Tatum. Keldon Johnson, I think, could be a fine, kind of bench wing for this team. So that's kind of where I'm at. And here at 14 to round out the lottery, I'm going to stop the biggest slide here, and I'm going to take Trey Johnson from Texas. Listen, I understand there's a lot of questions with Trey, and I'm really interested to get a couple of your guys' opinions on him. But he has about as good a shooting track record over the last 3 seasons of anyone his age ever. And all the rest of his game is a huge, huge question mark for me. I really don't like very much of it. I think he's an okay passer, actually. I think he didn't get to show that as much at Texas because that context was so bad. But just in terms of his special skill, he can really, really shoot the cover off the ball. He can shoot off movement. He can shoot off the dribble. And I think he can use it okay in terms of using that gravity to be a passer. I don't think he's ever going to be a particularly good, driver. I don't think he's ever going to be some high level defender. But you hope that with the tools, 6'6", 6'10" wingspan, he's an actual 2 guard in terms of his size, that he can kind of develop some defensively, and that his shooting is just so perfect next to a potential core of Jason Tatum and then another more ball dominant guy, right? And all of a sudden you can continue to be one of the best shooting teams. This worked out absolutely perfectly for me as Boston. This is the guy I wanted. I was considering even trading up. And then I kind of realized that it was Stone that had picks ahead of me, and I was like, never mind, it's fine. I don't have to trade up. But this is my pick here. I'm going to go back over the lottery order, but Charlie, I'd love to get your opinion. Where are you at with Trey? And why do you think he slid a little bit down, our boards as compared to, where he's likely going to go in the actual draft?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with your evaluation of Trey being just an unbelievable shooting prospect, and especially standing at 6'6" with a 6'10" wingspan. I think that has a chance to be a ton of value, right? Even if he's a 6'6", Buddy Hield, and the ancillary skills never really come around, that's still a valuable player on a lot of playoff teams. So he's a late lottery guy for me. Again, I have a lot of questions about the ancillary skills, but I think he's a solid, connected passer. I think even on the lower end, you're kind of looking at like a Bogdanovich, someone who's a great shooter, can handle some connected passes, handle some creation load, but it's probably going to be a turnstile on defense, not create a lot of rim attempts, but just shoot the cover off the ball, and a lot of teams need that.
Yeah, fair enough. Sam, do you have any takes on Trey?
Not really my guy. I think Stone has some really strong feelings about Trey if he wants to hop in, honestly, because they're stronger than mine.
Yeah, just this is way too high for me personally. It's too much of a bet this high on someone that I view as a specialist, and I know most people don't view him that way. That is how I view him, and I think taking a specialist, top 20 is a really difficult task because I think they have to hit a really high threshold to extrapolate much value out of. And that's for whatever reason, no one else sees it that way. That's how I see it. And I think, the onus is on me to figure out why that is. But I don't think that the interlay skills are at an NBA level threshold that can buoy what the shooting is, unless it is insanely nuclear. And at which case, I still don't know what the value of that is. If it's, a crazy high value of someone that's an insane shooter, that is a negative in so many other areas. So that's where I fall down on Trey. And obviously, by the time you're hearing this, I release my board. He's not really like a first rounder for me. So that's probably the biggest shock of what most people will, the biggest divergence from consensus.
Absolutely. All right. So the Bulls are on the clock here at 15 with that pick they acquired from the
OKC, right?
OKC. Yes, excuse me. But I'm going to quickly go over the lottery. So the first pick was Cooper Flagg, as expected. The second pick, the Spurs took Con Knipple, the first big surprise. With the third pick, the 76ers took VJ Edgecombe. The fourth pick, the Charlotte Hornets ended the Dylan Harper fall and took Dylan Harper. At 5, the Utah Jazz selected Kasparas Diakochonis. At 6, the Washington Wizards sprinted to the podium to take Derek Queen. At 7, the New Orleans Pelicans took Common Malawak. At 8, the Brooklyn Nets took Walter Clayton Jr. At 9, the Toronto Raptors took the most Toronto Raptors player ever in Colin Murray Boyles. At 10, the Brooklyn Nets took Noah Asonge. At 11, the Trailblazers took Carter Bryant. 12, the Chicago Bulls took Thomas Sorber. At 13, the Atlanta Hawks took Rasheer Fleming. And at 14, the Boston Celtics took Trey Johnson. And we're very happy with that. That's our lottery. So I'm sure some people will tune out after that, but there's still a lot of interesting guys on the board. And with the Bulls up here at 15, I apologize for that going off. Stone, do you have your pick?
I do. I do. I'm trying to negotiate at the same time here. And I am taking Jeremiah Fears, who I think a lot of people in this panel, at least two of them that I know of, are much lower. They have 2 picks here. I took Sorber with the first, obviously, and I'm going Fears. I knew he would drop this far just looking at who is ahead of me. And I think that I have a shot at a franchise point guard. And, I traded away Kobe White in the hopes that maybe I could find that. He's a swing on it. He's more flawed than a lot of these franchise point guards are, but I really buy the age trajectory with him. I think there's a lot to really bet on a star bet here with the advantage creation. I think he can get to the paint at will. I buy the shooting projection more than my co-host. So it's going to take a little bit of time. I think the Bulls personally have like nothing but time. So I'm interested to take a shot here at the last guy that I really view as like a true star outcome that has one. So I'm going to go with and pair him with Sorber here.
Yeah, so the Grizzlies here are on the clock with at 16 with the pick they got in the Desmond Bane trade. Sam, quickly, I do want to get your thoughts on Fears. Coop and I have made our opinions very clear. You guys can go back and find those pods. But Sam, Fears falls outside of the lottery. What's your take?
Yeah, I think Fears is pretty hated on draft Twitter for the most part relative to like NBA team consensus. I'm sort of with Stone here. I buy the shooting projection. Free throws good. He took a pretty difficult diet. And like people say that like Oklahoma was not the worst shooting environment, but like really Goodine was like the only other shooter on that team who was like consistently spotting up. Duke Miles was his backup, like chucking threes also, but made the numbers look better. But yeah, I think the upside's real. Like it's achievable. It's a bit of a project, of course, but outside the lottery, you are looking for, the best available talent, especially given the Bulls just traded away their best player. So I'm here for it.
I'm all for it. All right, Charlie at 16 with the Grizzlies. Who you got?
So the Grizzlies are a little bit, I want to say more difficult to draft for, but their outlook's definitely a little bit different after trading Desmond Bane for those four first round picks to Orlando this week. But probably regardless, I'm picking my guy Adu Darrow out of Arkansas. Darrow is easily one of my favorite prospects in this year's class. Obviously, just a downhill monster athlete. I really like buying into the development trajectory. Obviously, he was a late bloomer, a guy who was a guard in high school, and he could shoot the cover off the ball, when he was 16, 17. And then obviously that slowly faded away as he throughout his college career and the back end of his high school career. But unbelievable athlete, probably the most explosive athlete in this class for my money. I think he's going to be a great defender on the perimeter. I think he can make decisions with the ball in his hands, and really just one of the highest upside guys I think left on the board. So yeah, that's the pick at 16.
Yeah, no, this is man. Coop is losing his mind. We will have a trade to announce for this next pick, and I'll explain it. But it's the Boston Celtics up. But Coop, will you wax poetic about how happy you are to see Adu Thiero go this high, and how upset you are that you didn't get to take him?
Last guy left in my lottery tier, Adu Thiero, and Charlie's one of the people who talked me into him specifically. So it is fitting that he stole him from me here in a few picks. Just a free throw tank, can get into the lane, can hit stuff. He can score from any point of the floor except 3 right now. But I like Charlie. I believe in that long term. The defensive stuff, he can really block shots. He's a good rotator. He's just so long and a controlling presence on the interior. I know Bryson Stone hate his reaction time, but at some point you got to just take the guy who's a super athlete and can just get you buckets when you need it and get to the line when you need it. We've seen guys with I think he's really strong and athletic in a way that we've seen translates in the playoffs. And that easy offense when the game slows down is just so valuable. So Bryce, if you want to announce your stupid trade, you can.
Yes. So this trade was obviously originally, this pick, was obviously originally Minnesota's. Minnesota traded Mike Conley, this pick, and the 31st pick to Detroit for Jaden Ivey. And this pick was rerouted in a deal along with Tobias Harris, pick 37, and a 2026 first to Boston for Derek White. So it's Boston now making this pick. They trade Derek White. I'll give my quick explanation here. Derek White has 4 years on his contract. Tobias Harris has 1. I would like to get off of Derek White. As much as I love and value Derek White, I think in 3 years, when it's time for the Celtics to win again, there's at least a 50% chance that Derek White is kind of cooked. I love him. He's a great player, but he's going to be a way more valuable player on a team like Detroit than he will be on Boston. And I wanted this pick because there was one guy that I had circled, really hoping he would make it here, and he did. And I'm going to draft Yoann Béranger, the French big man who I think is just a special athlete for his size. I think he plays hard. I worry about the hands. I have my concerns. He's a multi-year project. Great. The Celtics have time for that. They also don't have a ton of bigs that I'm in love with, right? Like, if it's going to be KP and Luke Cornett, I think there's a path to minutes for Béranger there to at least kind of start to get some development time in the NBA, which I do think is important. So I'm really, really happy with how that fell. Stone, do you want to give your perspective here on Béranger, or not Béranger, excuse me, on trading with the Pistons? And while you do that, Coop is on the clock here with the Wizards.
Yeah, I think the Pistons took strides last year. I feel like very significant strides towards winning, and I feel like they showed enough to me as the GM of them to warrant going out and getting more win now talent to further that, advance that. And I think Derek White is the exact kind of player that does that. I think he fits really well alongside Cade Cunningham. Either of them, I think, can initiate the ball. Both, I think, are solid defenders. In White's case, are a really, really good defender. And after we traded away Ivy, I was sort of scouring, looking to see if there's another guard I could replace him with, and White to me just fit perfectly. I think they have enough young players. I'm not really too interested in spending more developmental time for youth right now with the progress they had last season. So I'm going to try with Derek White here to see if we can, maybe go higher than 5 in the playoffs. Maybe we end up the 3rd seed or something. So that's sort of the thought process there.
Yeah. Sam, would you just tell us a little bit about what you see in Jaden Ivey that you wanted to make this trade with Minnesota?
Yeah, I think Ivy made some serious strides in the last year or so before the injury. I was getting in an argument with like a real life friends group chat who were like were dunking on Ivy. And, if you just pull up his like Darko DPM, he went from like a really negative player to like a positive player pretty quickly. He made a big difference, and his shooting leap, like, I think is real. He offers a lot to Minnesota in particular. Like, he could have on-ball and off-ball reps next to Ant-Man, super athletic. I think it's a great pick, or great trade, great player. Helps them win, which is clearly their objective right now.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. Coop, are you ready?
Yeah, the pick is in. I'm about to do something so out of character, man. This is a new bit for me. With the 18th pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the Washington Wizards will select Jace Richardson out of Michigan State. Everybody else in the rest of my first round is like 23. And as much as I am all for drafting good players, I think Jace at 18, 19, however old he is a good player. And as much as I don't understand the type of player he currently is and the value he projects to bring, at the end of the day, he just plays ball and he kicks butt and he can play a role, bare minimum. He's small, he's got long arms, decently athletic. And if anywhere is going to like give him the chance to really blossom and become more than he was really able to show at Michigan State, it's Washington. They could also use more point of attack defense. And, with Queen, you don't need any more, ball handlers. You have your super duper gaduper star of the future in him. So we get to move from here. Rockets are on the clock. If you guys want to talk about the Jace pick, and then I'll come back and make
Charlie, I really want to get your perspective on Jace, and not only his fall here, but what seems to be like maybe a fall in consensus. I actually think there's a pretty good chance that even though this would be low for a lot of, quote unquote draft Twitter, this would be pretty, like, this might be solidly higher than he goes in the actual draft. How do you feel about Jace? How do you feel about this pick here?
Yeah, so Jace is one of my favorite players to watch in the class. You watch him play basketball, you really understand that he knows what he's doing out there. He's one of the guys who just makes good decisions every single time the basketball touches his hands. And I thought the scale up in usage throughout the end of the season was really interesting. For him potentially unlocking, some higher end creator outcomes. At the end of the day, though, it is tough to bet on, a 6'2" guard who doesn't profile as a high usage ball handler, someone who's going to be off the ball, especially defensively, because in that off ball role defensively, you might want to just have a 6'7" wing who can play some of the roles. But I think Jace, and especially with Jace's decision making and the shot making, he has outcomes where he is a clear top 10 player in this class. And I think it's the perfect pick for Washington. Perfect pick for Washington there at 19.
Yeah, Rockets are up here at 19. Trying to get rid of the pick because I realize that I don't love anybody left. But Rockets are pretty happy here with the 19th pick, 2025 NBA draft. Houston Rockets will select Nick Clifford out of Colorado State. Just a good-sized guard who knows how to play. We need guys who can actually shoot the ball, who can get downhill, play the right way, can defend, just play a couple different roles. We need more wing bets that aren't, wing guard bets that aren't Aaron Holiday sized or Fred VanVleet sized, can actually defend. I think our front court is pretty set. We have a really strong front court of the future, but adding, just a poised, solid vet in Nick Clifford who can really make a difference for us. That on top of Cam Johnson, who this is how we got to here was we traded for Cam Johnson, traded Dylan Brooks in 10. We love Cam Johnson. I think he's a better defender than Dylan Brooks personally, and a far better offensive player. A guy who can actually make your best players better, has a track record of actually winning games and going to the finals and being a valuable piece. I mean, Brooklyn built their entire offense around him, and it wasn't particularly good, but he handled it, and he was absurdly efficient. It has more to say about the rest of the roster than I think it shows just how good Cam Johnson really is. And bringing him in next to Şengün, next to Amen, add more shooting with Nick Clifford. We're pretty happy with how this turns out. So the Miami Heat are here on the clock.
Yeah, so I do want to say quickly on Nick and on the Cam Johnson move. I think Cam Johnson is underrated. Even like a team probably could have won the finals if they had traded for him at the midseason deadline. I really believe that. He has his flaws. Listen, he can absolutely get picked out and hunted by certain types of guys in the playoffs, but not every type of guy. Like, he is a better defender on some players than he gets credit for, even though the stronger strength-based creation wings will bother him. He can really shoot the hell out of the ball. He contributes to winning. I think this is a great pickup for a team that really struggled to make shots consistently outside of one guy who just takes a ton off the dribble. I like the Nick pick a lot. I think he is a really underrated passer. And I think the defense is pretty good. I think there's just a real path to winning basketball there, even if it might look a little different than I think some people expect, because he's not, in my opinion, he's not the traditional 3-and-D wing. Sam, you're up here with Miami. Who you got?
This is a dream come true. I am a lifelong Heat fan growing up in South Florida, so I wish I could take the reins and burn down the mess that they've created, but I can't. But in this scenario, I'm going to go ahead and take the best player that I had on my board, highest ranked player on my board, Drake Powell. I know that's a little bit surprising to some people, but, with Drake, I really think that the context and Hubert Davis held him back a ton. His priors in EYBL were pretty good in terms of shooting and self-creation. And, the anthropomorphic stuff is really, really quality with him. His B-Spark's like 90+ percentile. He's going to be a really good defender at the least. If you buy the shooting projection and, discount his abysmal free throw percentage this year, which you should, because he shot better on more attempts in high school. I think Drake is a really good two-way bet. And, going to Miami, they have a history of really maximizing guys like that. So I think this is a dream spot for the Heat and for Powell to get, a two-way, high-quality, relatively young wing.
Yeah, so I like Drake Powell a lot. I'm really interested to look at my board and think if I would have taken him here. There's one guy that I do technically have above him on my board, like a tier ahead. But a part of me might have just taken Drake Powell anyways, partially because I think the Heat are the perfect place for a guy like Drake Powell. I completely parrot everything you said. I think Hubert Davis really muted him. I think he's a great, great defensive player at times with upside to get even better. I think he's going to have to fix his shot, even though he has moments like the hitch in it is just it's just not going to translate to the NBA, right? He's going to have to get a more upward motion on it, but I just think he's a hell of a player, and I think this is a really great pick, and I think he's really underrated. The Jazz are up here. I know that Stone is trying to move it, so in the meantime, I kind of wanted to, that's our top 20. There's one kind of obvious person missing, I think, from this top 20. So while Stone figures out this trade deal, Charlie, what's going on with Ace Bailey?
So yeah, so Ace Bailey, yeah. So while I'd be shocked if he fell to 20 on actual draft night, I'm not quite shocked that he did that in this mock draft. Yeah, so he just has a lot of statistical red flags, and the only thing he really does productively, on the basketball court right now is be a high volume, high efficiency mid range shooter. Even the overall shooting profile, I think, is somewhat rather pedestrian for what he gets billed as, and I think the defense is further away than a lot of people want to give it credit for, just with the size and the length, and I think a lot of people watch the highlights, and the highlights are some of the highest level plays. When you see someone that size making the shots that he makes with that level of fluidity, it's easy to understand why people fall in love. But I just have a tough time betting on someone who struggles as much as Ace as a decision maker, and I really just don't buy anything in his profile to a great degree at this point.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do want it to be said, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong. For me, I don't factor any of this weird stuff that's coming out in the media about him into this at all. I was low on him before. You can go back and listen to that podcast where we talked about it. I've never had a ton of interest in Ace Bailey. Now we're getting to the point now where absolutely this is where you take a guy like this. But I do think that it's interesting. There is a trade to announce. Stone is making a trade with two of his teams, but as the commissioner, I have deemed it fair. The Jazz are trading. It's Jaden Springer, I believe, that's on their team. As a Jazz fan, I don't even remember the fact that he was on my team. And pick 21 to the Detroit Pistons for pick 31, Marcus Sasser, and a 2027 second. This is it may be in an average draft a bit light to move up to 21. But what I will say for the Jazz's sake is lots of times teams like this will make moves to have guys on cheaper deals. Pick 31 in a lot of cases is viewed as more valuable than picks 25 through 30 sometimes, because you get to get those guys on cheaper deals for less time. So for whatever it's worth, Stone makes that deal. I'm assuming the pick is in. Stone, floor is yours here.
Well, the slide has stopped. I know everyone's been panicking, but the Detroit Pistons are actually going to be taking Asa Newell. I baited you all. No, I think Asa fits really well here for this Pistons team. Now that they have Derek White, and then you have Cade, Asar Thompson, and Ron Holland, and this works because I really buy Asa's shooting. And if I didn't buy it to the degree I do, I don't think I would have moved up for him. But I think he is really capable of playing in fast-paced transition. I think he can finish really well, and he's a low use. He can be a low usage play finisher alongside guys who are big time scorers and can take the majority of the ball handling duties. So I think he fits really well here. I was excited to take him. And the Pistons are happy as well.
Absolutely. Atlanta is on the clock here at 22, and we will start to move a little bit quicker through these now that we're into the late first, and especially as you go to the second. So, Coop, if the pick is in, the floor is yours.
Yeah, Atlanta just needs more guys. I know we talked about how fun our front court was a little while ago, and let's make it even more crowded, baby, with the 22nd pick in the 2025 NBA draft. The Atlanta Hawks select Maxime Reynaud. I know Stone is furious. Yeah, take that, dude. This is what you get. Reynaud is huge. He can pass the ball. He can dribble. He can shoot. Just a pretty well-rounded offensive big. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But putting a versatile pick and roll partner next to Trey here at 20, getting a guy like that, even if he is older, even if there's defensive worries, I think having the defensive infrastructure we do around him, with guys like Rasheer, guys like Dyson Daniels, Risa Shea one day, I really think this could be a really interesting front court where you could just play massive and throw different looks at every single different team every 5 minutes. So we're pretty happy, and even happier that I finally gave it to Stone here today. So.
Yeah, no, interesting pick here. I know the pick is in, Sam, but quickly, Stone, do you want to give us a little bit of why you're so high on Reno?
No. But I will, because I'm really frustrated. I debated taking him actually with that Pistons pick that I traded up for. It was between he or Newell, but Newell to me just fit a little bit better. I mean, he's a lotto guy for me. Getting a lotto guy this late in the draft to me is really good value. But on top of that, I think he's actually kind of exactly what the Hawks need, which is a player that can maybe just be like be that second guy for this team that I don't think they have offensively right now. I think at times Jalen Johnson maybe can be and maybe he does turn into that full time, but I think there's opportunity and room for another player to sort of be in that conversation. I think Reno is someone that can operate a lot of different offensive schemes and play alongside Trey and give Trey the kind of offensive help that I don't think he's really had, especially from the big man position in the ways that Reno can do that. So I like this pick a lot in that way, but I also hate this pick because Cooper just ruined all my plans.
All right. Sam is up here at 22 with the Pelicans. Who you got? Or 23 with the Pelicans. Who you got?
I expect this guy will be gone based on like the hype surrounding him and sort of the mystery aura, but I'm going to go ahead and take Cedric Coward. I'm personally not like the biggest fan. He was like kind of mid in the Big Sky for a little bit. Maybe not mid, but like, you would like to see someone really dominate that conference. But like, on the small samples that we saw, last season and a half prior to the injury, really intriguing, great body, he's the kind of two-way bet that you want to be taking, in the 20s. It's not like the Pelicans have plenty, I guess, theoretically, but you never know who's going to be around in a year or two out of, Herb Jones in trade talks. Doesn't really matter. Can you ever have enough wings? So I think Coward's a good pick here.
No, I think this is a perfectly fine range for Coward, but we are going to get absolutely killed by Hooper Twitter that Maxime Reynaud and Cedric Coward just went ahead of Ace Bailey.
I'll go ahead on the record and say I would not take Reynaud there, but
yeah.
That's just for me.
and I understand that, but I do. Coward is really interesting because he is such a bet on this combo of like weird development path and physical talent with just a really I like he is a good shooter, but I think so much of the sell is that the jumper looks so good. It's less even the efficiency of the jumper itself, and it's just like, man, like we don't have to do any work. Like he is just as like this picture perfect form on this for this 6'6" dude with like a 7'2" wingspan. I get it. Like I think this is a perfectly fine range to bet on that type of guy. But it is kind of interesting that he's risen so much. And I'm really interested to see where he actually falls because it feels like it's been, he really rocketed up boards and then he's like slowly kind of done the drop down again. So I'm always interested with guys like that, where they might fall. Stone, are you ready here at 24 with the Bulls? No? Okay. Charlie, do you have any thoughts on Coward as kind of one of the more, I don't know, hard to parse guys in this draft?
Yeah, so I'm actually a really big fan of Coward. He slides inside my lottery ranking wise. I don't know if I'd have quite a lottery grade on him, but just guys at his size with that 7'2" wingspan, standing at 6'5", I really believe in the shot. I think he's going to shoot at the next level. He's been an efficient play finisher at every single level, great around the rim, great behind the arc. I know the defense wasn't as functional. It's a little bit more theoretical at this point, But I think once he gets into an NBA team's development system, gets some coaching, he has a very clear path to being, a valuable wing who can play finish, score efficiently, and score efficiently at the rim behind the arc, as well as defend the wing at at least the league average level.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. All right, Stone, you're up here at 24 with the Bulls.
Yeah, the Bulls will be selecting Noah Pende here. They're, I think, pretty excited about it. Give themselves, I think, really bolster their defense between Pende and Sorber. It gives them somewhat of an identity that they have never had on that end the past, at least decade. I'm happy with it. I actually did talk about Ace Bailey with the rest of my front office, but he's in my lotto tier, so it's difficult for me to draft outside of that. But I also just don't think this is for him to be worth that lotto pick, that value. He has to be in the right situation, and I don't think the Chicago Bulls are that. So I'm going outside of my tiers, which is very rare, but this is the unique circumstance. I think it's warranted.
Yeah, fascinating here. Penda and Sorber, this is the most Stone Hansen pill draft of all time. That's all I got to say about that. But all right, Coop up here at 25 with the newly Desmond Baned Orlando Magic. Who you got?
That was awful wording, but with the 25th pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the Orlando Magic select the last first-round player on my board, Amari Williams out of Kentucky. Orlando has a lot of bigs, and they had a lot of humongous players. You know what? Let's lean into it. Let's lean into, they have so much cap taken up by, a guy like they're actually good players that, as much as Wendell is paid like slightly above market rate, you probably want to trade that salary and start trying to duck under the tax. They don't make moves like that. They're going to have the most expensive team in the league in the next few years. So he gives you the option to also move off of a guy like Goga, who's really popped out this year. I love what Amari Williams does. He allows you to really lean into offensive rebounding and defensive rebounding. He gives you some playmaking on the perimeter. He's an inefficient playmaker at times, but this is a guy whose motor is just legit. And if you're going to have Paolo clanking middies all game, then you might as well have Amari there to go clean them up and turn them into good-looking shots. So we're pretty happy here. And now I am completely out of first-round value guys, which almost never happens in these exercises this early. But it's nice to see.
I will not be accepting any Paolo Banchero slander on here.
Tell me his true shooting price. Wait,
he was coming back from injury. Okay.
Oh, he was coming back from injury, and he doesn't know what a 3-pointer is anymore. Okay, I'm glad we're on the same page here. So,
okay, I will calm down. Slandering my Pacific Northwest boys puts me in a bad place. You just wait until the Marjon Beauchamp resurgence next year in New York. Okay, let's. But anyways, all right. Brooklyn is up here with back-to-back picks. Brooklyn has a tendency to do this. I feel like so they did this when they took they had Cam Whitmore and what's his name from Alabama. They drafted those guys with back-to-back picks. I think that was 21. Noah Clowney.
It was Clowney and Derek.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Did I say something else? Yeah.
You said Whitmore.
Oh, yeah. Not Whitmore. Derek Whitehead and Noah Clowney. I want to say the Zadan Musa draft, they had back-to-back picks too, but that was
you've been on a Zadan Musa kick the last few days. I'm not liking this.
Going back and watching Real Madrid, he's so tough. He should be in the league. But anyways, I'll make these two picks quickly because the first one, I'm going to stop the Ace Bailey slide here. There is no better place for Ace Bailey to go than Brooklyn. Not because I want him to get like a million shots or anything, but because we already drafted Walter Clayton and Noah Songe, who are going to be like primary forces and things, and I'm going to try and make him play a role with those guys. And if he can't do it, he can't do it, whatever. This is the 27th pick in a draft that I don't like that many, or the 26th pick in a draft that I don't like that many guys in, so I'm not losing any sleep over it. And now I am out of guys on first round grades. So I'm moving into that second round tier. And I'm gonna get a little funky. I'm gonna draft a tone setter here. I'm gonna draft someone who I think is just a toughness guy, a guy that I'm really in on. I'm gonna take Alex Tui. Coop is disappointed. I think I know who he thought I was gonna take. Tui, listen, he's weird because he's not a great shooter. But there's just something about him, man, with the toughness, the way he moves. He's just, the way I put it, like, so much of the sell is he's tough, he's a good rebounder, he has a good sense for the ball, he can defend. But he is also he's also just a real, 6'8", 6'9" strong guy that I think can play the three. Like, that has value. Being a bigger guy that can play as an actual three, that does matter. So I know that's probably like a crazy reach. There's also a chance that I would stash him, to be honest. Like, I think that's a possibility for me. I don't know that I want 4 rookies on this team, as bad as I want to be. So listen, I know Tui's kind of a weird pick. Stone, how do you feel about, I'm going to think about Boston here for a minute. How do you feel about that combo of guys to Brooklyn here at 26 and 27?
Yeah, I mean, it's Brooklyn's now stocked up on length on the perimeter, that's for sure. When you have Asenge, Ace, and Tui, I think all three provide very different skill sets. If Tui is able to stick rotationally, and I think he will on this Nets roster, between he and Asenge, that's a lot of length on the perimeter defensively. Even Ace, who has his question marks on that end, but I really love the tools. I think that trio combination really gives you somewhat of a perimeter defensive force to work around, and they'll provide very different skill sets. So I like that you have a different sort of change of pace on the perimeter there.
Yeah, so I'm at this really interesting spot with Boston where I kind of have these 3 guys on my board that are all pretty close. And the question is, do I take another kind of freshman to, I already took Trey Johnson, a freshman who maybe had these kind of ups and downs. Do I take an older guy who is, the upside is fairly limited, but I like the toughness. I think he'd be a good kind of role player on a good team someday. Or do I take someone that I'm just not going to bring over immediately? Do I take a stash guy? Because there are a couple of those guys I think I could get away with. I'm going to go Liam McNeely here. The Boston taking white shooters. I just can't help myself. I know Stone and Cooper like out on McNeely. I like him at least a little bit in this range. I think that the high school shooting was somewhat real. I think that he is he was kind of playing out of position. I think he's fairly smart. I wish he was a little bit tougher. I wish he was a better finisher. I don't think the upside is like crazy high, but I think there is real path to being an NBA player because he's 6'8" and can make shots off the move. And he's competent with the ball in his hands as a decision maker. Sam, I kind of want to get your quick take on McNeely before Charlie picks here with the Suns at 29.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of with Coop and Stone here. Like, I just don't really see much of anything at an NBA level here. I guess the shooting priors give you some hope at his size, but yeah, it was pretty bad this year for a pretty good coach, and the situation is fine. He, they leaned on him a little bit, and he did not grow into the role. I have him in the 50s.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I can't even argue a ton. I had him like 8th in my preseason board, so maybe I can't quit the priors. Charlie up here with the Suns at 29. Who you got?
Yeah, so this board actually worked out pretty perfectly for me. I only ended up ranking 26 guys on my board this year just because they're the 26 guys that I really believe in as NBA players. I have one of those left, and that is Ryan Kalkbrenner. He's going, who knows what the situation looks like in Phoenix next year, right? Obviously, they had that Kevin Durant domino that needs to fall before you really know the direction they're going in. But there is no bigs on this roster. I think I was looking earlier, they have Nick Richards, and he honestly might even be it. But with Kalkbrenner, just a productive player over his 5 years, great play finisher at the rim, does an amazing job of defending the basket without fouling. I think there's a very clear path to him sliding in and being able to, take 20 minutes a game from day one, at least on this Phoenix roster, and provide value as a rotation big man.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We're getting into the point now where I think it's about taking bets on guys that you believe in. I'm lower on Kalkbrenner. I don't love the physicality or lack thereof that he plays with somewhat, especially defensively. And I just a little bit question, his upside, but he's very productive. Sam, you're up here with the Clippers at 30.
Yeah, I'm going to take the highest rated player on my board, who also I think fits with the Clippers. This might be a little surprising, but I'm taking Will Richard from the University of Florida. I have Richard in the low 20s. I think that it's actually astounding that he's ranked or considered outside the top 60. Winning player, can make shots, great at the rim profile last 2 years. I just don't know why he isn't being looked at as a guy, especially with the national championship bump. In the interest of time, I'll stop there, but I really think Richard's like an NBA player who could play in the playoffs and, one of those guys who people are going to be like, how did he slip through the cracks?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very worthwhile pick there, and for what it's worth, I am not going to read our first round. We've had that joke plenty of times before, but we are going to move a little bit quicker through our second round here. And Stone, you are up with the Utah Jazz in that trade they got from Detroit.
Yeah, there's one more guy left in my first round caliber guys. So the Utah Jazz will be taking Max Scholga here. I think that he's a change of pace guard, can play both positions, and I don't love Colin Sexton or Jordan Clarkson long term, and they only have one more year on a deal each for them. So if I can't find a trade partner, I'm just not going to re-sign them, and I'll stick with Max Scholga moving forward.
Yeah, Boston here at an interesting point. I'm going to take a stash guy. I don't want to bring this guy over, but I'm going to take Ben Saraf. I'll take a bet on just a bigger guy that I hope can be a point guard. I think there's some real issues there in terms of the handle and the ability to gain attention as an off-the-dribble shooter, but I think he can really pass. He's been productive on a good team. I think the defense is pretty solid. I'll stash him for a couple of years and see. He might be the next Yam Madar, where he just stays over forever. But my roster has too many guys, so I don't want to bring anyone else over. Sam, you're up here with the Hornets, back to back.
Yep, Hornets back to back. They're obviously the Hornets. They're not that great. So you don't really have to worry about what's on the roster. I'm going to go ahead and take two bigs and hope that one works out. I think both of them have pretty high upside if, things go the right way. I'm going to take Bogoljub Markovic and Hanson Yang back to back. You could talk about, competition concerns for both of them, warts defensively potentially. Don't care. The upside's there at this point in the draft. You take two, hope you get one. And I think they both could end up working out, to be quite fair.
Yeah, love the Yang pick. Bogoljub, I'm a little lower on, but I'm upset that Yang is no longer there. Charlie, you're up here at 35 with the Sixers.
Yeah, so I was planning on going with my guy Markovic, but here I'm going to go with Cam Jones. Obviously, we went with VJ earlier in the backcourts, getting pretty filled up with VJ and Tyrese and Jared McCain. But Cam Jones is just a player I really believe in, as a great decision maker. The shooting prior to this season from behind the arc was extremely impressive, and he's just a guy who I think could fill a role on a bench in the league as a backup ball handler who makes good decisions.
Yeah, so I'm up here with Brooklyn and then Boston. And so these are two teams that are kind of in similar spots. With Brooklyn, I think I'm just going to add to the war chest of like young guys that I kind of like, who I think are pretty far away, but I can kind of feed some usage so I can maximize my chances of getting Cam Boozer. And that's going to be Will Riley, who I think I'm higher on than the other upside swing guys. But I like what Riley at least a little bit because I think he can actually dribble the ball as a 6'8" guy. I don't love the shot. I don't like the passing particularly, even though there's some crazy good flashes. But I'm happy with it. Coop, the Celtics are up. With the Celtics, I'll take the guy that is. I would assume all of us are the lowest on as compared to consensus. But he's the last guy that I would draft to give a contract. From here on out, everyone on my board is a two-way guy. I'll take Jaeger Devin. What do I want him to do in Boston? I don't really know. Probably develop as like a 3-4, playmaker, like maybe mid-post type guy. I don't know. He's really got to figure out the jumper, I think, to be a real player. I don't think the handle's real. I don't think the passing is as real as some people do. Like, I think he's a good passer, but also like 75+% of his assists this year where he would stand still holding the ball, and BYU would run some of the nastiest stuff I've ever seen in my life, and he would just throw the ball to the wide open guy, which is good that he knew where the wide open guy was, but it's not like him, manipulating anything, and the NBA doesn't really work like that. But a fine bet here. The last guy I would give a full contract to. Stone, you are up here with the San Antonio Spurs.
Yeah, the Spurs are just they need big man depth. I think is probably the biggest need. I don't know if this man can provide it. Cooper, I know, is low on him. I'm gonna go with Rocco Zakarski here. I think that the development could be awesome. I think Rocco's upside is much higher than a lot of people. I know the downside is low, but I think the Spurs are in a position to take a chance on him. And you'd have two insanely massive guys theoretically playing together, which would be pretty interesting. But I'll take the swing here this late.
Great. Charlie, you're up here with the Raptors. Who you got?
Yeah, so we're gonna go with Hugo Gonzalez here at 39. Again, just a fun bet on a guy who measured in well, has some offensive feel. I like the defense. I like the motor. And he's a guy, if the shot ever comes around, you're looking at a player with a real path to being a rotation wing for an NBA squad.
So not to distract too much, but I do want to ask you and Stone, are you guys stashing Ugo and Rocco? Are you guys bringing him over on full contracts on two ways? I do think we're kind of at the point now where, like I said, like everyone I draft from here on out will be on the two way. But is that something like? Do you guys put any thought into that, or would you want to bring him over? Would you want him to stay in Europe or Australia?
Yeah, the Spurs have no intention of stashing. They're interested in bringing Rocco over right away.
Yeah, and then for Toronto, I'd be happy letting Hugo stash for a season or two over there, assuming that we have a outlook for him to have a bigger role, more production next season. But yeah, I probably would prefer to stash than to bring him over year one.
Respect it. All right, Coop, you're up with the Washington Wizards and then the Golden State Warriors.
The Wizards, they need some culture guys. They need some guys that are really tough, that can do a little bit of everything. And a guy who I think is really slept on and would be sick here in Washington. They're going to take Wisconsin's John Tanji here, bring him in just to add. They have not that many good guards, and I think Tanji can play up and down the lineup, add some real offensive punch. And then we will hop right over to the Warriors once I find their overlay. And as much as I want the Warriors to explode, I will make the pick that I would make if I was them. And I will take Igor Milicic, who I was worried Stone was going to take from me with his last pick, a guy who can operate their big man spot, can help run all the grenade actions, back cuts, door screens, all this bullshit. Can dribble. I think he can shoot I think he can handle the ball. He can really finish on the inside. This is a high field big who I think can actually come in and play for them and give them an actual look and just kill them. So Johnny Davis and John Tanji are very different. Okay, one of them has balls and the other one doesn't. So let's say it like that. So who's up next?
All right. Sam, you're up here with the Sacramento Kings. We're staying in California as Coop pulls up the overlay. Sam, who you got?
I wish I could give him to a better team, but the Kings are like hell bent on competing anyway, so like it totally works. I'm gonna take Zion James. I think this guy is like ready to play NBA playoff minutes. He's so competitive on both sides of the ball. Had on-ball reps at Tulane before he transferred up to Duke. Does everything, and the kind of guy you want to play winning basketball. And the Kings are trying to play winning basketball, so it fits. But I think this is a guy who's ready to play and sort of plug for any type of team in playoff contention.
Yeah, no, I think Zion is really interesting. If I really bought the shot more, I think I'd be more in. But really, really fun player. Was again the type of guy that I think maybe goes underrated because he was a big part of like a historically great team, and that doesn't matter. Stone, you are up here at 43 with the Jazz. Who you got?
Yeah, the Jazz are just going to replenish sort of their guard cabinet here. They're going to take Javon Small. I think both he and Strugel, you have two bets, I think, at NBA guards in the hopes that one pan out. But I both have a chance, I think. And I like the positionality flexibility of both. So I'm going to take Small here.
All right, I'm up back to back here at 44 and 45, 44 and 45 with the Thunder. One of these picks did come to me in that trade with the Bulls. The Thunder are planning on bumping up. What's his name? I'm blanking on his name now. From the small school that was on a two-way this year. They're planning on bumping him up to a full contract. Lefty. Oh my God.
AJ Mitchell?
AJ Mitchell. Yes. We will bump him up to a full contract.
Why? He's not an NBA player, bro.
And we will replenish our two ways here. I don't think we need much guard help, so we're kind of looking more on the big line. And I will take I'll take Danny Wolf here. He fell a ton. Obviously, if this was real life, he'd probably rather just go undrafted and pick his spot than get drafted on a two-way, but this isn't real life. Danny Wolf fell a lot for us. I'm guessing we all kind of feel the same way, where we think he's very theoretical, where he's kind of fun and funky to watch, but not actually that effective on the floor. Fine, worse version of Arkansas Jalen Williams here. If Arkansas Jalen Williams didn't have the type of toughness that he has, then Danny Wolf, I think, is pretty similar. Maybe a slightly better handler, but I think in terms of actual translation to the NBA, fairly similar, at least in terms of potential role. I'm kind of torn between two guys here because I really want to take someone, even though I think I don't know how it works, but I'll take Bryce Williams here from Nebraska. I just think he could really fit into the perimeter offense that OKC plays with, while also having, some defensive chops. So, Coop, you're up here with the Magic at 46. Who you got?
We already took a big man, but you know what Orlando needs more than anything is shooting. So we will be taking the best scorer in the country, according to analytics. We'll be taking Villanova's Eric Dixon here. Guy who can just shoot the piss out of the ball. And even if he doesn't do anything else, you can play some crazy lineups with him, Franz Paolo. You now have him and Amari Williams that can be your bench 4-5 and just dominate dudes on the interior, on the exterior. They could run DHO actions, the two of them, and involve big men in that DHO action. Imagine Eric Dixon getting easy threes against drop bigs, because he has Amari Williams as his screener and he gets to play the four. That's awesome. So I think the Bucks are up here now, but Orlando's very happy with how they've come away in this draft.
Yeah, I thought you were going with this big man, but thankfully you didn't. The Bucks will take Yannick Konen Niederhauser here. For me, he's the best big left available, and I think the Bucks just sort of need to make that swing sooner rather than later on a future center. I don't know if he is the one, but I think you just pair him with insane athleticism. Between he and Giannis, I don't know how much playing time he gets, but they don't have much of a backup center right now, anyways. So I'm going to go with YKN here.
Absolutely, Charlie. Are you okay? Charlie is up first with Memphis, and then he will have a pick with the Cavaliers as well.
So with Memphis, we're going with a textbook Memphis pick. We're going to take Janai Brew. Obviously has an incredible analytical profile, was dominant the last 2 years at Auburn. Obviously, I have my concerns with the NBA translation, but we're taking a pick at 48. I think he's a good bet on just being a good basketball player. He has great touch with the left hand and shows some interesting stuff defensively as a rim protector throughout his career. And then with Cleveland at 49, I'm going to be going with Nolan Traore. Obviously, just buying the dip on him. Pretty much everybody left on the board at this point is just throwing darts at the dartboard. And he's a dart that I would like to take, especially if he hits the downhill driving ability and the playmaking with his size are certainly interesting bets at this point in the draft.
Yeah, we are all lower in general on Traore. I think I don't really buy the shot. I think the playmaking is maybe a bit oversold by some stats. But I do think it's worth noting that he is maybe a little bit underrated at times because he did put up some stats in a good league, and it's probably worth at least keeping your eye on as an NBA team. Coop is up here with the New York Knickerbockers. Coop, who you got?
You know what? We'll take the swing on somebody who Stone likes, who I don't particularly love, but I think is a sneaky bet in this range to just be an NBA guy. Peyton Sandford out of Iowa. I think he's got enough surrounding talent for how good of a shooter he is. He had a tough year where he was overtasked, but he rose to the challenge. And I think he's tough for a white guy who played at Iowa. So I like him. Pretty solid little player, and maybe he'll be something. And if not, it's not the end of the world here for the Knicks.
Utah is pissed right now.
Absolutely. All right, Sam is up here with the Los Angeles Clippers. Or I guess they're just the LA Clippers now. They're no longer really the Los Angeles Clippers. They've kind of changed that. But anyway, Sam, who you got?
I'm going to go ahead and take a guy I think could be a NBA two-way wing. Clippers want guys to compete. I think this guy might be able to help them immediately. I'm going to take Micah Peavy. If you buy the shooting leap from his time in the Big 12 to his time this past year at Georgetown, I think he's really, really interesting. Pretty massive, long, athletic guy. If you think he's shooting, he's pretty plug and play.
Yeah, no, Peavy, I haven't finished my film scout on, but I've liked him for a number of years now. So I think there's some intrigue there. And again, we're kind of at the point where you're just taking bets on guys you hope can be NBA players. And Peavy, I think, is a fair bet. There's at least a path there with just how consistently solid he is as a defender. Charlie is up here with Phoenix. Charlie, who you got?
Yeah, so with Phoenix, we are going to take Jameer Watkins. I don't know, outside of Kevin Durant, who's honestly probably more before. I don't know if there's a 3 on this roster. So he can probably slide in year one, takes a minute. 24 years old, but I actually really liked his profile last season. Obviously had a little bit of a down year this year at Florida State, but a bet that I'm happy to take here at 52.
Yeah, sorry. Stone is on the clock here with Utah. Stone, who you got?
Yeah, the Utah Jazz will take Isan Almanza here. I think that they have plenty of bigs already, but this is a big that I believe in pretty much more than anyone else. And I think that the development there in Utah actually kind of makes a lot of sense with the certain bigs that he'll be playing alongside. So I'm happy to take him here.
Hey, Stone, I have a question for you. Are you dropping Wooga Poplar so that you can
Shut
say
up.
you're going to
Shut
sign
up.
him
Shut up.
undrafted with the Lakers? That is not in the spirit of the exercise, Stone.
Shut up. Shut up. Shut up.
You know what? Just for that, I will take Wooga Poplar here with the Pacers. I was not going to do such things. I actually had a different guy that I really liked here, but just as punishment for letting a first rounder on your board fall this far, you will
One
not get
pick
to be
away.
a Laker. You will not get to be a Laker. I'm not particularly high on Wooga.
You don't deserve
but
him.
I do think in Indiana he's kind of a fun bet, right? Like, could he be Aaron Nesmith back up at some point? Yeah, like that's a possibility in terms of his effort level defensively. I really like the rebounding. He's a good spot up shooter. I don't necessarily buy the shot translating because of the low release, but he's a good athlete. I think as he transitions from someone who was used as more of like a guard to someone who is just going to be a pure wing, I think there's a pathway there, even if I'm not in love with this game. Stone, you are up at 55 with the Lakers. Who you got?
God, I hate you so much. Actually pissed me off. I almost saved Ezon so I could pick between the two in case one of you took one of them, and I would have been able to take one of them, but Bryce caught on to my shenanigans. I'll take St. Thomas here for the Lakers. I really like him. I don't think we have had a chance to talk about him on the pod yet, but I think that he's a really solid bet as a wing / guard that just really knows how to play basketball well. So I'll take him here with the 55th pick.
Absolutely. Charlie, you are on the clock here with Memphis. Who you got?
Yeah, with Memphis at 56, we're going to be going with Kobe Brea. One of the most interesting, just pure shooting prospects in the second round. I feel like had almost a 2.8 assist to turnover ratio this year. Obviously 90% from the line, shot over 40% from three. I don't believe in his game too much outside of the decision making and shooting, but at 56, it's a player who I'd like to have in my system.
Orlando's up and ready here for their pick. We're debating between two people, but I guess we'll go with the guy who's higher. I don't know. I'm going to mispronounce his name. Chris Mannion. Chris Mannion, defensive chaos maker. We were talking about, we're going to change it. We're going to add more shooting, fix our identity, fix our holes. Fuck that. We're just going to add on to what we already have and keep things rolling. So we're happy here. And Charlie, I think you're back up with Cleveland. You ready? Or
Yep. At 58, we're going to be going with Hunter Salas. A guy who actually had a ton of hype in last year's class before he ended up returning. Still interested in the shooting and the overall shot making with him. Obviously had a down year, but I don't think the defense is entirely destructive. And 58. Bet I would like to get him on my summer league team.
Absolutely. I'm happy with how this board shook out because I have one player left. I should say I am up with the Brooklyn Nets, another Brooklyn Nets pick here. I had one guy left on my board that I care enough about to draft him to make sure I could get him on a two-way. All the other guys are just kind of like whatever to me. And we'll talk about some guys that go out and drafted here in a second. But I'm going to take Grant Nelson. Listen, Nelson is super weird because he was sold as something he wasn't 2 years ago. And that became like there were people who were talking about him as like a lottery pick or something, which was always like insane. But I do legitimately think he's like a really good athlete for a big guy. And he measured really well at the combine, in my opinion. He's pretty far away defensively, but I think he can be a good transition player. I think he can do some stuff where, he can catch on rip drives. He can dribble enough that he can take one or two dribbles to get to the rim. Listen, he's not great or anything, but for Mr. Irrelevant on a two-way, I think he actually has a path to playing, an NBA role. Quickly, before we talk about guys we like, I don't think there's a ton of like high-level guys that went undrafted here. I mean, Vlad Golden is maybe the highest like profile guy that went undrafted. Elijah Martin from Florida. This UDFA class is really weak. Is there anyone I'm not pointing out that you guys think, is like an interesting undrafted guy here?
I mean, in terms of the names that didn't get drafted, I'm not super high on necessarily, but Chaz Lanier and probably Tyrese Proctor in that sort of realm. But in terms of the guys that I'm high on, like everyone that was in my top 43 picks, which I think are worth giving a full contract to, all got drafted. So everyone outside of that, like there's a bunch of priority guys on the two ways that are interesting swings, but none of them are worth giving a full contract to me. So my board, because of Bryce, is fully out.
No one else has any. Fair enough.
Dude,
I mean,
I have literally nobody else.
Sorry.
No, Sam, if you got someone, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I actually have two guys who I think are draftable who did not get drafted, and like I understand why they wouldn't. One being Jonathan Pierre from Belmont. I think he had like a 3.9 BPM in the MVC. Like that's not great. Like I get it. But he was like the D2 National Player of the Year, like a late bloomer, grew a bunch after high school, had like 0 offers, and like came into Memphis with some hype. If you remember, he was like the #1 JUCO player, and like he did a lot at Belmont. Like maybe it wasn't super efficient, but he's massive and can shoot the ball and can dribble the ball. I think he's worth a shot. And the other guy being Chris Youngblood, who I've heard almost 0 hype about in a class with like no shooters. I'm a fan of his game. At USF, he showed some stuff off the dribble and like with the ball in his hands more. He was kind of like told to stand in the corner at Alabama. But, I think he could shoot the cover off the ball and, a guy worth, a late pick in this draft because there's no shooting.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. I would like, I want to just kind of run through, if you guys could tell me, your personal either favorite pick you made or favorite draft with a specific team that you had. I'd just kind of love to hear your guys' thoughts on who you were particularly happy with. Charlie, who stands out to you that you really feel like you hit it out of the park with?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite fit in the class obviously is lower down the board. I love Kalkbrenner in Phoenix. I think again he can be their starting big next year. But the Colin Murray Boyles fit in Toronto, him and Hugo. Again, we're just adding more wings that can make decisions. Play both sides of the basketball, and really just building an interesting infrastructure a bunch around a lot of guys that don't necessarily fit together, but a couple of those guys hit, and you have a really interesting team to build around long term.
Absolutely. Coop, who's your kind of favorite team that you drafted with?
Washington. It has to be Washington. I got Queen and Jace Richardson, and I feel like adding 2 legit impact guys by my board, and my #2 guy at 6, I think is just a great snag. I think really they both fill a lot of the holes and a lot of the development issues for everyone else. They help make everyone else's life easier. So I'm really happy with my Washington draft in particular.
Love it. Sam, who you got here?
I mean, I think that the Hornets are thrilled that they walk away with Harper. He solves a lot of issues. Like him and LaMelo is a good fit. It gives them both room to develop theoretically into what they could be. I think it's a great backcourt pairing if they, hit their ceilings. So they're the most thrilled out of my teams.
Stone?
Yeah, I'm really happy. Even if we didn't trade for Derek White, like I think Asa Newell on the Pistons just fits really well. I also love Knuppel on the Spurs. Hopefully that didn't completely tank our listenership 10 minutes in. But I think those two for me make a lot of sense. And I want to say thanks to Sam and Charlie for hopping on here with us, especially with Charlie. I know it was short notice. And we had a lot of fun having you guys. And this is sort of the biggest episode I think every year for us, and we look forward to it. I think mock drafts actually hold some value just because there's different ranges for each of these guys, and you think about that in ways that I don't think we have a lot of time to do throughout the evaluation cycle. So I think it is actually a useful exercise, but also it's fun. So thanks for coming on and joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. For what it's worth, for me, the Celtics are the team I'm happiest with. I got to figure out something to just dump Drew Holiday probably, but really happy to leave with Trey Johnson and Johan Berenger. Liam McNeely was whatever, Ben Saroff, whatever, Jaeger Demon, whatever. But leaving with Berenger and Trey Johnson makes me very, very happy. Not having to use, I mean, Trey was at 14, but not having to use a high lottery pick for either of those guys, getting them on fairly affordable contracts, and really setting myself up to be either be bad next year or find out that Peyton Pritchard is actually a low level all-star guy because he's carrying us to the playoffs. Either way, I'm happy with how I'm set up for the Jason Tatum injury year. And then we'll go from there. But again, like Stone said, thank you so much to Sam and Charlie. Charlie, this has been 3 years now, and we love you. We appreciate the work you do, Sam. You've really kind of come out of the woodwork on Draft Twitter, and we're so happy to have you on. We love all the work you do. I think you guys are great basketball minds and some of my favorite people to talk with. So please let people know where they can find you, where they can find your work and all that. And we'll make sure that you're tagged and everything. But we really do appreciate you guys. This was a great exercise. And as always, when I spend time with you guys, when I spend time with Coop and Stone, I feel like I learned a lot and I gained new perspectives on guys. And that's really what it's all about to me. So Sam, if you want to go first, just let us know, let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be here. First real go around on talking on the internet, I guess. Awesome job. You guys are the best. So thanks for having me. You can find me on Twitter at _PG, double PG. And looking forward to getting dunked on for having Demon in the 50s. Let's go.
Charlie?
Yeah, man, I just want to say thank you guys, man. This has been, one of my favorite days of the cycle, of the entire draft cycle. Every year that we've done this, it's always just a great time to get on here and talk. You can find me over at C Parker NBA. Hopefully in the next couple of days, I'll have my board up and hopefully I have a write-up to pair with it. But yeah, just thank you guys. I appreciate you having me on, man. This was an absolute blast.
Of course. I legitimately cannot recommend these two guys and their work enough. Charlie, we've known each other for some time now, and I've always enjoyed the work you do. And Sam, it's been great kind of getting to know you over this past cycle and getting to understand your work better. I think you guys both do a great job. You both bring super interesting perspectives, and we're really happy to have you guys on. Like Stone said, this is kind of the culmination of everything for us. This has been a really rewarding cycle in the sense that we really tried some new things and we tried to be different. And, we spent the last couple cycles, I don't want to say spinning our wheels, but kind of trying to figure out what it was going to look like, especially with Coop and I graduating college and having to be like adults. It was a bit of a change, but this has been a really, really fun time. So for Coop, at @Ali_Oop_Coop, for Stone, @Report_Court. I'm at Bryce Hendrick 14. Make sure you give us a like, rating, review, all that fun stuff. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, comment, hit the bell. We will be doing stuff in the off season. We will be doing draft reactions and all that fun stuff. And make sure you guys tune in for the live show. We're going to have a blast being live for the draft, talking all that fun stuff. We'll start at about 30 minutes before the draft. Stone and I will have a fun little exercise. Coop and I will talk about the handsomest guys in the draft, as we always do. It'll be a great time. Thank you guys for all the support this cycle. This has been the Upside Swings NBA Draft Show. We hope Waiter Ceiling. Thank you.